Lovers of the association. This is your guy Marcellus Ease, and it's that time of the season that we all love. NBA playoffs are back, and in this segment right here, we're going to be breaking down quite a few dynamics playing out with the Golden State Warriors and the Memphis Grizzlies. Ja Morant's a long way from 2022, where he was almost at the top of the mountain as far as being an NBA darling and having his health. And within that time period, he actually was favored to beat the Golden State Warriors. But after getting hurt in that Game 3, things never looked the same as the Grizzlies eventually fell to the Warriors. But let's not forget, when Ja was healthy, he did average 38 points per game in that series. So fast forward to this season, Ja Morant is still battling injuries. And for the Golden State Warriors, even with the addition of Jimmy Butler, they have seen better days. And there's still going to be a huge workload put on Stephen Curry's back as well as Jimmy Butler's. But in the most recent playing game, there was a lot of concepts to take away. For the Memphis Grizzlies, what happens when someone other than Ja Morant has the hot hand? And also for the Golden State Warriors, when the other role players are not hitting their shots. Could Stephen Curry at the age of 37 still have enough stamina to fight through these playoffs, especially being matched up in the first round with the Houston Rockets? So both teams have a lot of questions to be answered just beyond this playing game. And before we get to this segment, let's hear from Draymond Green as he spoke on some of the difficulties they had all the way back in 2022 as being underdogs.
2022 wasn't really a championship team. Like, the championship teams that I've been on. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't really a championship team. And I'll tell you, like, after every series, me and Steph would be walking to do an interview after we won the series. And we walk and laugh.
Yeah.
And we laugh like, yo, how?
How are we doing this shit?
How are we winning, like, these series right now? And we literally laugh like, this is funny. But that's also when Steph took that next step of like, I'm really one of them GOATs. Like,
for sure.
And he carried us. But that was the toughest one. We weren't favored. Like,
hell no.
Everybody was calling us too small. Boston, they too athletic, they too big.
Yeah.
We didn't stand a chance. And we went and made it happen. So that one was my favorite one.
Okay.
And then also, you know, I told KD, I'm gonna win when you leave here.
Out the gate.
And
you did that shit.
I did that.
Yeah.
So that one was the most fulfilling for me.
Now, some of those dynamics Draymond spoke on of being too small, not athletic enough, are also playing out in this year's playoffs. And you have to factor in the Golden State Warriors. They've aged since then. And for the Memphis Grizzlies, had Ja Morant been a bit more healthier and not injured his ankle in that third quarter, that speed and athleticism could have really compromised Golden State. But again, in this segment, we're going to take a deep dive into some of these concepts. And this year's playoffs, I got to say, there's going to be some tough realities both these teams will have to face. But hey, I'm not going to say no more. Let's just get to it.
We make the rules, pal. The news, war, peace, famine, upheaval, the price of a paper clip. We pick that rabbit out of the hat while everybody sits out there wondering how the hell we did it. Alcohol, right?
When it comes to the Warriors this postseason, as Draymond alluded to earlier, them being the underdogs, it's still the case. Even though they have made a great pivot, getting Jimmy Butler, another high IQ player that's not only offensively aggressive, but he could also understand the spacing that Curry needs, some of the cutting, some of the passing skill sets that he has resembles of what Draymond Green does. And going up against the Memphis Grizzlies, they were able to generate a lot of open looks for their role players, guys like Buddy Hield, Pods, and also Moses Moody, but they weren't able to knock down these open looks. And that right there is going to be the conundrum of this team. Is Jimmy Butler and Stephen Curry in their late 30s ready to take on this type of workload? Because going up against the Memphis Grizzlies, they sort of lucked out because they had the smaller Scottie Pippen Jr. He was the one responsible for chasing Stephen Curry off these picks. And the Grizzlies not having Jalen Wells at 6'8", a bigger body to put on him, just like the Houston Rockets. They're going to have Amen Thompson, Tari Eason. They're going to have plenty of bodies to toss on Curry, and we're going to see how he handles some of that pressure. And it's an unfortunate thing that the Warriors had lost to the Clippers in the last game of the season. That was a hell of a battle, but Just imagine how hard they have to work for their shots going up against the Houston Rockets. You're going to have Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith Jr. And just check out Curry's starting point and look how hard he has to work for his shot. And keep in mind, this is all with the role players not knocking down their shots. So Steph has to work this hard to get, a little offense off. Unlike the Rockets in this playing game, Pippen Jr. standing at 6'1" doesn't necessarily have the size. But still, Curry had to work really hard to get his shot off. And keep in mind with the Warriors, they like to play small. So they're going to have to hold off all these big forwards, 6'8", 6'9" guys that are speedy. It's going to be difficult to keep them at bay. And when it comes to the Warriors offense, it was very noticeable that they had Edey on Jimmy, just giving him a lot of space, daring him to shoot. What happens when the role players are cold and also Jimmy doesn't necessarily have the range? Because in this matchup, he knocked down quite a few three-pointers, surprisingly. The three-point shot is not really Jimmy Butler's thing, as right here he's hesitant. He's going to pass up on it. He's going to get another crack at it. He's still hesitant right here, but he finally lets it go. This is not going to be common from Jimmy. Now, looking at the Warriors offense, again, it's interesting how they were guarded because they had Edey on Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler doesn't really shoot threes, but in this matchup, as you can see here, he passes up on this three, but he was wide open. Good old Jimmy boy was able to get to the line 18 times. So that was able to make up for a lot of the shooting woes of the role players of the Golden State Warriors. And playoff Jimmy has no problem showing off, getting crafty, just getting to the free throw line. The only thing is that, unlike the Miami Heat, they're not as athletic down low and also out in the perimeter. Guys like Gary Payton, Buddy Hield, you're going to have Pods, Curry. Playing small enough is already an issue. And could the same Jimmy Butler from the 2020 bubble finals show up and have to put things on his back? It may lead to quite a bit of exhaustion, being at the age of 35, about to hit 36. The same thing for Stephen Curry. This is the Warriors' kind of issue with this matchup going up against the Houston Rockets. Şengün and Steven Adams is going to present a lot of problems down low. They may struggle rebounding, and also they like to play small. And the Rockets have a lot of versatile perimeter players out there. With the NBA, sometimes it's all about the matchups. And Golden State, unfortunately, even though the Vegas odds do have them somewhat as the favorites, which I believe is a trap bet, the story is really what we saw in the regular season, where a lot of these games came down to the last minute. And going into these playoffs, after playing 82 games, we're going to see if good old Jimmy boy and Stephen Curry has it in them to kind of make this happen. Once again, the role players of the Golden State Warriors are going to have to knock down their shots. And just to end the season, they lost quite a few important games. It was a couple of poor shooting nights out in San Antonio and versus Houston. And with the Golden State Warrior defense, let's flash back to 2022 when the Grizzlies were actually the favorites over the Golden State Warriors. The series in which Ja Morant got injured in Game 3. And keep in mind, even with Andrew Wiggins in this lineup, Ja Morant's speed was still too much for this team. And it's crazy how just all these injuries he's recently had just kind of came back to bite him. And just the lack of focus with his gun incidents. Check it out once again right here. Tie game with about 2 minutes left, and Morant's speed just presents an issue for the Warriors. It's too much to deal with. Again, right here with about 30 seconds left with Andrew Wiggins on him, their fastest perimeter defender, and Ja still does his thing. So fast forward to this season, the Warriors don't necessarily have a speedy defender. And Ja, even through all his injuries, that speed still presents a problem. Look at the players out on the court. Nobody has the perimeter speed that Andrew Wiggins has. It could be just the luck of the basketball gods, because this is the second straight time in a playoff scenario that Ja just gets an injury while going up against the Golden State Warriors. And in both scenarios, they really didn't have an answer for him. Again, in that 2022 series, Ja Morant was averaging 38 points per game. So going into round one of the playoffs, What's going to be their answer for a speedy player like Amen Thompson and also Jalen Green? In this league, we're always hearing them say it's all about the matchups. And with the Memphis Grizzlies, even though they did have bigger size than the Warriors, the unfortunate thing is that their center in Edey, he doesn't quite yet have the experience. See, right here, he has an advantage. But is he able to put the ball on the ground fast enough and not only finish or just improve his decision making, hit guys off to see who's open? See, with Edey, his decision making is going to be real important right here. Pods is going to blitz him. His precision on his passing and his decision making. You see, he just missed Pippen Jr. down low for an easy layup. But eventually, he's going to make these reads. He's still a rookie. He's still learning. And this is why I said the Warriors, they kind of lucked out in a few scenarios right here going up against the Memphis Grizzlies with Ja Morant's ankle and also with them having a few inexperienced players, Scottie Pippen Jr. just being a tad bit too small in defending Curry with Jalen Wells being out and also Edey in the post, not necessarily being a swift decision maker real quick in a very pressurized and highly stakes playoff game. See the Warriors right here, them just loving to play small. Edey on this roll. And look at the Warriors. Look at everyone that's out on the court. They're all small. Got Draymond, the low man. There's really no answer when you look at it. If Edey was a more polished, kind of vet, the Warriors would just have a lot of issues. See, with the Grizzlies right here, down 4, just Edey getting the ball in the post right here. Could he make the quick enough decisions to kick out or just look someone open? Just kind of read the floor, but right here, he doesn't necessarily have the touch yet. But that was an important shot with 5 minutes left, down 4. Here's Edey again, posting up Jimmy, and Draymond is blitzing. Is he quick enough to read the floor and make this pass? He's tall enough to make it, but he kind of reads it too late and turns the ball over. When it comes to the Memphis Grizzlies, they're in an interesting conundrum because this team, they're a good team. They have a nice little youthful unit, especially for a small market team, the way they organize and kind of structure everything around Ja. But where does the duo of Ja and Desmond Bane rank? And also another question I have is sometimes do they force things into Ja when it doesn't really necessarily have to be? And here's a prime example of it right here. The controversial ending to the game where they started off the play a little bit too late and it's really designed for Ja Morant. But in reality, Desmond Bane, he really had the hot hand, especially from 3. And the second option really should have been Jackson Jr. to take this. But they didn't even get off the inbound as they get called for the violation. And that pretty much sealed the game. But there's a lot to be said about this very particular matchup. For the Golden State Warriors, this might be fool's gold into this, little play-in victory because there's quite a few storms ahead and things are going to get quite rough. And for the Memphis Grizzlies, I would say they got a few decisions to make because at times when you have a superstar like Ja Morant who really can't stay healthy and he's on one leg and you have other players who are hot from 3, why not go to them? But then again, they fired their coach right before the postseason, and the temporary person that just took over, he might not have the power above the superstar. It's an interesting dynamic with the hierarchy in the NBA with these teams. It should be coach, then the superstar, but in the NBA, it's really the superstar, then the co-star, then the coach. But again, these playoffs are going to be very, very interesting. Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies are really a team that's trying to get back to their glory days around the time of 2022, where they were actually favored and viewed as a better team than Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors that end up winning the championship. But Ja Morant and his lack of focus and just injuries piling up, it's amazing how guys at the end of the day take certain things for granted and they're really trying to get back to where they once were. But it's some interesting dynamics that are playing out here in the playoffs. Just touching base on a few interesting nuances. And we're going to get deeper into this as playoffs kind of get along. But I'm going to leave it at this for today. Until next time, you fellas stay safe. Peace.